How's it going with the cool background there?
Yeah, I'm not a
Yeah,
corporate. I'm not a corporate sellout yet. I am.
yeah. So that's pretty amazing. Sean
Yeah.
McKenna.
We for side hustle. We landed Molson. And then he kind of wanted Barstools as well. So they basically take care of all our banners and stuff, which is pretty cool.
You complain on that end?
Nope,
Not at all. It's good.
it's as good as cash, man.
It is.
Yeah,
It's a good currency.
yeah, that's right. I'll take it.
So how's it going with you in the land of rock and roll? Keeping super busy, I see. All the
Yeah,
time.
it's been good. Looking forward to next weekend. We've been rehearsing pretty hard with the new songs and stuff, and I've been obviously very tied up with the song that's been out. That's going really well. So yeah, can't complain. And obviously, I have this offshoot of Barstools, which is I call it Rim Shots with Sean, and I that's been going really well too. I started a couple, and now I have people that are emailing me wanting to be on it. So it's just hopefully managing my time in a good way.
Yeah. It's kind of
Yeah.
like the old-fashioned TV shows now. They go on YouTube, people start discovering it, and
Yep.
they just keep on clicking on it. Next week, you know what they're doing again? They're on their big screen TV and checking it out once again.
Yeah, and I mean, so you must know Jason McCorston.
Absolutely.
So Jason, he does all the producing for me, and he smartly said, you know what, do a couple of segments per episode, and we'll do one on Friday, one on Sunday, and it's really working out nicely because I keep them short, between 10 and 12 minutes, and it's good. It's almost like that cliffhanging Three's Company ending where you got to tune in Sunday to see the rest of it, right? So
Is it because the attention span, a lot of people now, they don't want to sit there and watch a 1 hour interview. They rather check it out in little bits and clips because that's what I'm seeing in my world.
yeah, no, I think so because I think that. I think what it is that people look for if they know they're going to be in it, they want to hear about themselves and they'll listen all day long. But if it's just something to look at, I think it just depends on the guest and who it is. So I really try to get people. I mean, most of the guest suggestions are suggestions for people that are part of Barstools. Can you get this person? Can you get that person? So it. I think the shorter the better. I just find too. I don't know if you find this when you interview people. Um, you start to run out of stuff to talk about and you almost go in a circle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. But I mean, the thing so you could, let's say, talk to a legend, let's say, and you can talk all week long to these guys.
I
But
tell you what was cool. So we had Eric Martin from Mr. Big on.
yeah,
And so we did, I think it was 3 segments, and then Dave had to take off. And Eric's like, well, we had another producer at the time. And Eric's like, well, what are you guys up to right now? Nothing. Why? He goes, I don't have to go to my son's basketball game for another 2 hours. We sat there and shot the shit with him for an hour and a half. And we covered everything from, what Nova Scotia is like to craft beer. It was cool. And so what a cool dude. He was just a super, super cool guy.
when you can start doing interviews and going outside the music and talking about craft beers and what do you like to do, outside of music, yeah, you got something interesting there because right now you got some content nobody else got.
Yeah, and kind of what's happened. I hate the term organically, but it is kind of what happens because the way that when I interview somebody, I'm listening to them, but I'm also ADD, so I got to focus. But I'll hear something and then I'm thinking of another question. And what I like about the rim shots thing right now that's different than Barstools is I don't have a co-host, so it's kind of it's on me. So if I flub it, I flub it. But there's not that talking over each other and shit. He took my question, man, and you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
I kind of feel like I'm Peter Criss doing my solo album right now.
Okay.
But it'll be a lot better than his solo album in '78. So
Okay. I actually enjoyed his 78 album.
yeah, I did too, man. I did too.
Very good classics on that one. There's a few songs that's not the best, but
Yeah.
you're a drummer, so you should like
Yep.
them pretty much.
That's
So
right.
it's like that. When did you discover I'm gonna do this. I'm playing drums all the time. Now I'm gonna do interviews all the time.
I was doing a minor sports show on CIOE in Lower Sackville, and it was just basically I would go and talk to athletes or whatever, and everything shut down. Dave and I actually were out on the Saturday before everything shut down on the Monday. I was actually supposed to go to Dolan's Pub in Fredericton, and that came to a grinding halt. So we sat around for about a week, and we were kind of, what do we do? What do we do? And it's like, well, I got this sports show. I can't do any sports. So I had the idea to just call some of my friends and talk to them. And I was doing it myself for about a month and a half. So I talked to Jackie Smith and I talked to Maurice O'Coing and guys like that. About 6 or 7 down the line, I called Dave and I said, well, hey man, why don't you and I do one? It'll be fun. I did it. And then we get this idea to go, well, why don't we go down to the location of the old Crazy Horse in Dartmouth and just shoot a little piece? And that was April 28th of 2020. And little did we know that was the very first night of Barstools Bandtalk. And I truthfully thought, hey, you know what? I'll do this for 3 or 4 weeks and then I'll be back at it. At that time, I was playing regularly with the frequency. 2 weeks became 5 weeks, became almost 7 weeks and 2 months and whatever. Things did open up again, but people just had such a zest for it that we just kept it going. And that's kind of what it's become.
Yeah, and it's like it started out as, this quarantine type of special. Let's entertain the people online, and then let's start incorporating this into, the show, and, making, because we do see Barstools and Bandtalk now all the time at concerts, let's say, like at Monty's and stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, so what happened? There were some really neat things that happened early. Like Dave did a walkabout of himself and with himself. By himself, I guess is the best way to describe it. And he went around Dartmouth at first, and he counted 28 former locations of bars from the day. And if you think about that for a second, you could play 28 weekends and not leave Dartmouth. Hardly any of them are there now. And then we branched that out to Halifax, and then all of a sudden we start getting club owners that are saying, hey, can you come down and shoot our place? And then we do an interview with a local person. Oh, well, I'm playing at the Triangle. Can you come down? And so we didn't have any want for content, but a real neat thing happened. We reached out to Darby Mills, and we thought, this is going to be a long shot. Two guys from Dartmouth sitting there doing, a show on their iPhones. And she came back and she said, yeah, I'd love to do it. And it was funny because we get her on there, and just before we start recording, she goes, yeah, this is going way better than the last one, because the last one I did with these two guys, they're doing it out of their parents' basement. And I'm laughing because I'm in a basement and Dave's living in his mother's house at the time. We're like, oh, we're way more professional than that, Darby.
Yeah.
And but I'll give her total credit because she was the one that put us on the map. That was the first one that we said, hey, we've got Darby. We talked to her for about 3 hours, and that was the one that kind of kickstarted. It took us out of Atlantic, Canada, and broadened the horizons.
And Sean, when you look at, go and interview people outside of Nova Scotia, you are doing that. You're expanding your audience because people organically do discover you. It's like when you start interviewing Mr. Martin from Mr. Big, you're into the international now. When you start interviewing people from Japan like Marty Freeman, you're gonna start getting different crowds.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the first, outside of Darby, the next one that we interviewed that was, we'll call him international, was Liberty DeVito from Billy Joel's band. And I saw the movie Hired Gun, never met him, and I kept saying for months after that, if I could spend 5 minutes talking to that guy, I'd sit there and shut up. We got him. His manager said he's got 15 minutes, and we started talking. And at the 15-minute mark, we said, Lib, we're at the 15-minute mark, and he's got this real deep voice. Well, I got nothing to do. I'm having a great time. And we had him for 2 hours, and just some of the coolest stuff, talking about how he recorded some of those old albums. And he was very forthright about his relationship with Billy Joel. And, we don't pry, and we don't, we're not one of that thing, we're not the show that goes for the dirt. One of the first things that we ask people before we start is anything they don't want to cover or anything that they don't want to tackle. And without a doubt, almost everyone, nope, no problem, just go ahead. And so we've been very fortunate. I won't say lucky, because you know what, we do the work, we work hard, we have a lot of people that help us. Like another one, we had Todd Zuckerman. And my friend and yours, Tommy Mayette, sent me a note, and Tommy's like, if you can get Zuckerman, I'd be a happy man. Our friend Bruce Nelson down at Monty's unbeknownst to us, sends an email directly to Todd. And I'm helping Dave move into his new house, and I get this text, we got him. And I call Bruce, we got who? We got Todd Zuckerman. Here's his email address. And we had Todd on the show, and what a gentleman, just such a nice guy. And I think the cool thing is that, certainly myself, I've never been a fanboy. I've had the pleasure of, in my career, of opening for a lot of, bands, big, small, whatever. But I've always looked at it as, hey, you know what? They might have more success than me, but we'll put their pants on one leg at a time. I've never been a fanboy, but I'm respectful. And that one for me was it was great, because there's a dude who, he's playing in Styx, and he's playing with Gowan, and he's world renowned. We just sat there and we chatted with him like we were, three guys at a bar having a good time.
Yeah, it's like that. In the end of things, he's just a drummer like you.
He's a savage drummer, but you're right. Yeah. And, it's really funny, because two of the things that happened early days, we went out and said, hey, who do you want to see? And there were some names that came back, and I would say 95% of everybody was very gracious, and they said, yeah, well, come on. There were some people in our own backyard to this day have still not come on the show, which is fine. We'll still promote them and whatever. There was only one interview that I can remember that we did where I was ready to shut it down, because I wasn't enjoying it. The guest clearly wasn't enjoying it. He was in a bad mood. We turned it around. It wound up being okay. We've not had, with the exception of one person, deny us an interview. So we've been very fortunate that way. And I think it's because of the respectful way we do it.
Mm. And people shouldn't be denying stuff. I mean, if they are musicians and they want to keep playing music, they should respect the airtime they're getting. Don't you think?
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I mean, again, if you're going to go on and, throw them a couple softies and, and then go, hey, well, what about, that divorce that you're going through? It's just like, that's I always say two things with the guests. I never want to recreate the Chris Farley skit on Saturday Night Live when he interviewed Paul McCartney, because that was hilarious.
Okay.
But I also never want to have that George Stephanopoulos or George that used to be on Much Music interviewed Sebastian Bach, and Sebastian got all ticked off and threw the mic down. And I never want to be that guy. So I'm always respectful when I sit and talk to somebody. And so far it's worked out pretty good.
That's good. And we don't want that stuff, because, man, people that do stuff like that, it's they have to check where they are in their lives, really. Yeah. That's the way I look at it, but positivity is the best way to do it. You do an interview, you talk. If you don't like it, end it quick, and it's content, basically. That's what we do.
And you nailed it. I mean, and I think some of the people that we talked, we mentioned Zuckerman, Matt Starr that plays drums with Ace Frehley was just a gentleman. Ron Keel from the day. I mean, I interviewed Ron on my birthday. Wow. And if you go back and look at that interview, it was hilarious, because he's like, just before we get started, I want to say a shout out to Sean McKenna. And he was just such a cool guy. And what I learned about Ron, he pitches himself and he sells himself like you wouldn't believe, but you don't ever feel like you're being sold. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And it's not Carney Huckster. It's very meticulous and calculated, but in not an offensive way. And he's the man. And I learned a lot from that interview.
So Sean, like you're a drummer now, you're interviewer, what else do you do in life? I mean, you're a pretty busy guy. You do all sorts of things, I imagine.
Yeah. So, started playing on some songs. So there's a song that just came out today by a gentleman by the name of Sean Morrison. We call him Cousin Sean. He's a cousin of Kyle and Ryan Boudreau, and he had a song that he had been working on, that Kyle had been working on. Kyle called me one day and he says, I need you to come down to the studio and lay down a track with Ryan. Ryan and I have been playing together for 6 years now, and he and I we get in a room together. We can be not playing for 4 months, and it's just like we've always played together. And we went down, and typical Kyle, he wouldn't let us hear the tune until we got there. And I'm sitting there going like, this guy's paying money for this. We went in there, figured the song out in about probably 15 minutes and laid it down. I think it was 2, maybe 3 takes. And then Sean was having a little bit of a hard time with some of the phrasing and the lyrical content. So Michelle Ryder, who we play with, gave him a hand. And he has a really nice song. Like I say, it was released today. It's called That Line. And everybody should check it out. It's really good. And, you know, he's a guy from Sydney who was nervous, and we just went in and had some fun and made it happen.
It's like that you do record label work.
So yeah, and clearly from Barstools, it was as an opportunity that came in. We started doing some work with one of my favorite bands when I was growing up that I used to see in the bars all the time was a band called Svengali, who people would know. I had the opportunity to open for them in 1994. It was, you know, myself and my former bandmates still talk about that as a weekend of our lives because we grew up idolizing these guys and they were super cool. We start Barstools, and all these threads start coming about Svengali putting out a 3-song EP and through RFL Records. And I'll give Tommy credit. He hooked me up with a guy by the name of Patrick Murlock, who's in a band called Fear. And I interviewed Patrick, and then Patrick said, "You got to interview Sven," and away we went. That kind of forged this relationship with RFL Records where we started interviewing some of their artists. And about 5 months ago, John Marchoa, who is the CEO, asked me to come on to be the director of A&R. And, you know, I had to think, you know, the way actually, I was thinking about starting a label myself. And I had called John to ask his advice because, you know, I'm still playing at a high level. I still practice all the time. You know, I go and I play, but I also, you know, I do realize too, hey, if Neil Peart's got to pack it in, Sean McKenna's going to have to pack it in at some point. So I was kind of looking at, you know, what's the next kind of horizon that would be interesting that I might have a crack that, you know, maybe someday turn a buck at. And so it just worked out, and it's been a lot of fun. They're a great group. They've got some great talent. Svengali dropped a cover of Triumph Spellbound about 3 weeks ago, it's getting attention around the world, and it's really neat to be talking to some people like in Finland and, you know, Sweden and Brazil and all these places. You know, it's really, and it's opened my eyes to how the business works, and it's part of it I knew, and some of it I didn't, and it's been very interesting.
It's a long journey to A&R, and you know,
DC says it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll, right?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
DC always said it right, and you know, you're never big if you don't go to Brazil, I guess, like Kiss and all them.
Well, that's amazing. We signed this guitar player down there by the name of Alex Meister, and they call him, if you go check him out, they call him the George Lynch of Brazil.
Oh, wow.
And the one caveat he had when he signed the deal was he wanted to have the rights to Brazil for himself, which is like, fine. The thing I love about RFL Records is no deal is the same, but the biggest thing is that the artist never loses the rights or the publishing to their songs. That's never asked of them, and they always keep that. And I think that's part of the reason why a lot of the artists like signing on to the label.
Well, Sean, keep up the good work, and I mean, with everything you do, because on the YouTube channel listed for Barstools and Bandtalk, there's lots of potential, you know, in the years to come.
Yeah, and a couple shouts out. So I want to give a shout out to Jason McCorson, because Jason, that guy, I've known him for close to 20 years. He was a tattoo artist. He did this tattoo for me. He's not doing tattoo work anymore, but we would have an idea, and without even asking, he'd send some really cool artwork. And he was always bang on, to the point where you never even had to look at it. You knew it was going to be good. And he approached us about a month and a half ago and said, "Hey, you know, I'd love to edit some of your stuff." And so I started this little rim shots with Sean. He immediately sent the logo, which was amazing. And he's been editing it for me. And the feedback that I'm getting on it is it reminds people of the old pop-up video from MTV. He's got all these little things that pop up, and it's interesting. And, you know, Jason's such a workhorse. He runs Riverfest, which is, you played that. You sent me some video of you guys down there at Riverfest. and he's a guy that he never craves the spotlight. He put a lyric video out with McCarty that called Torn that is absolutely incredible. That they did a lot of parody videos too.
Yeah.
He did Michelle's lyric video, and it was funny because he got the song and I didn't hear from him for about a week, and then he sent it to me and I was just like, you never suck, man. You always nail it. And he's a huge part of this team. Another guy, Jeff McPherson, who and I want to tell you a story about Jeff. I don't want to ramble too much, but Jeff was a guy who I knew in high school, and was always kind of I call him Josh Brolin because you see him, he's a handsome little bugger, right? Really great drummer. Jeff started sending us he would make these little memes that were attached to Barstools, and people go back, they're really funny. Jeff was really shy, and he started getting a little bit of people saying, "Hey Jeff, that's great, that's great." This guy now, he goes from like being in the background to having pictures of him at Lawrencetown Beach pouring water in his head, stuff like this. He's another key person. I don't want to leave anybody out, but there's just been so many people we've just been, Jackie Smith, Razor Boy. I mean, he was a guy growing up, was one of my heroes. He's a dear friend of mine now. He was the first one, man. We launched him, and people just latched on to it. So it's been a lot of fun. And out of Barstools came the Side Hustle project, which you had asked me about, and that's going great guns. I mean, when you what it's like, and you sent me some video of you playing. I was super impressed, by the way, brother. I mean, I told you this when we were texting. You don't hear too many shredders anymore, and the ones that do kind of, it's almost like a monkey humping a football. You know what I mean? It doesn't sound great, but Side Hustle was supposed to be my side hustle. Kyle was playing in the Frequency, and then he was doing some solo stuff, and there'd be weekends that I wasn't going to play. So I wanted to put something together on the side, and but I wanted it to be interesting. And we had a couple of different ideas for singers, and then when Michelle popped up, it was just like, you know what? There's a pile of material that people love to hear that a singer can't tackle, and that's kind of how it came out. And that's been a lot of fun. That's kind of parlayed into this writing stuff with her and what have you. And I'm very lucky, man. I got a good team of people, and I'm one of those folks that needs a lot of people behind him to make me go, because I'm an ideas guy and I'm like all over the place, but I have a hard time focusing. So I need a lot of support.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, all those people you named are all, legends for Canada, and, Nova Scotia, because I mean, they're all contributing like so much. And I mean, bravo.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, Jason, and I mean, you're a musician, right? So you're playing a show and you know who the musicians are in the audience because they're sitting like this and what have you. And the first Side Hustle show, which was February 27th. So we got next weekend will almost be the year to the day that we played the first show. And there's a phrase that I came up with, and it was one of those things where it wasn't meant to be funny, but it kind of was, and it's kind of been ringing with me and following me around. A friend of mine came up and said, "Do you know there's 10 drummers in the audience?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "They're all here to like want to see you like frig up." And I'm like, "Well, tell them all I get their $10. They can leave anytime they want." Yeah. And where that came from, man, is I've never been one to fret about who's in the audience. I know what I do. I play to my strengths. Don't go to my weaknesses. I know when I don't have a good night, so you don't have to tell me. I also know when I have a great night, so you don't have to tell me. But I never get nervous about that. And I think it's important that when I go to other people's shows, I'm not the guy in the audience like this. I'm usually the first one up saying, "Way to go. Can we get you on Barstools?" Not enough of that going on.
Yeah. And I'm just like what you just said. I go to the people and say, "Hey, how about an interview? What can I do to promote you?"
Absolutely. Yeah. And, we were texting late last week, and, you play in one of your, what are you playing, 15 or 20 bands right now? Is that what you told me?
No, not that much, but.
But you play with a good friend of mine, Rob Donnelly. Well, Robbie Donnelly to me. And I mean, Robbie was a guy that I grew up with in high school, and great to see him out playing. He's a super guy. Didn't even realize that he's brother-in-law to Kevin Valley, who's another guy down in Yarmouth who's just been such a supporter of this thing. And it was pretty cool, man, to see that. And I mean, I haven't seen Robbie, I bet you, in 25 years. I've seen a lot of video. And I think Side Hustle's playing Riverfest this year. And if you guys are playing it, then maybe we'll get to meet and hang out and have a pop. And
Absolutely. I mean, it's got to happen.
Well, and I will tell you, I'm a lot better looking in person.
Okay. Perfect. Is there a clause, when you got to be so much good looking to interact with somebody else?
No, I don't think so. I think you shake what your mother gave you, if you know what I'm saying. So you just figure it out. And but we're a very exclusive crowd in terms of who we let through the door. Um, we'll even promote people that aren't supporting us, which I think is a rarity. I
Yeah.
will say that I've been accused in the past of only supporting people that support Barstools, and I think if you were to go on and see who was supported, and I won't name names because I don't want to sling mud, but I my biggest goal, obviously, I'd be stupid to say I wasn't going to promote myself. That's crazy. However, I think it's important to, especially now where we're trying to get this thing going again for the second and third time, that regardless of maybe what my beliefs are in terms of whether I get along with somebody or whatever, I think we're in a position now where we have to support everything because we we didn't ask for Barstools to blow up, but it kind of has. So I think it's important that we do that.
Yeah. No, 100% support from me. I mean, you're doing great stuff, and it's got to be seen.
It does, and there's so many. You forget about how many great musicians are in our own backyard, and
Yeah.
I'll mention one. So a friend of ours, Paul Brushett, he plays in a band called Skin and Jones, and Paul did a fundraiser that we were part of at Christmas time. Basically, it was for Feed Nova Scotia. He's got a son who's 16 years old, and this for me, some people will go like, "Oh man, you must be nervous." I'm not nervous, man. Here's a 16-year-old kid that slays the drums. He's got a really fun band called Funk Fear Express. Funk Fear Express. I'm messing up the name. However, it's good to see that, hey, when I'm 65 years old and I can barely get out of my chair and play anymore, here's a kid that's going to be, keeping it going. That's very cool, right? And those are people that I have to support. And I do it without, I remember somebody saying, man, you're promoting Tommy. Tommy's amazing. Great. Tommy does his thing. I do my thing. Tommy's a great friend. Why wouldn't I support him? He's fantastic. He's amazing. I support you, and you and I we haven't met face to face, but we've become good friends on Messenger over the last week. Why wouldn't I support you? I mean, you sent me some video. I gave you instant feedback. That's what we have to do, right? We have to kind of get over ourselves and get out of our bubble and, get the scene going, right?
That's true. Thank you again. We're running out of
Sure.
time here because we know that Zoom time is 40 minutes now.
There you go. Well,
Yeah.
that was a lot of fun, my friend. And we need to reciprocate and get you on. We'll get you on Barstools, Rim Shots with Sean, brought to you about Barstools and Bandtalk. But I appreciate you doing this. It was certainly a treat.
Thank you. All right. Cut.
Cool, man. So I'm going to ask you a question. You mentioned Monday. Would you mind if you and I do you on Monday?
That's fine.
And I'll tell you why. So we got it. I didn't shamelessly self promote these side hustle shirts, but
Nice.